Hello friends, hello fellow Inklings, and welcome to my channel. Now I'm sure you're wondering, why did she call us Inklings? I'll tell you that in a minute. First of all, I would like to introduce myself a little bit more. My name is Mary and I will be going over different authors, literary works, and just going over and sharing them with you. I look forward to doing this because I'm so passionate about literature, and I just find the information that you can get from books, even if they're nonfiction, is just so fascinating and so valuable to help us grow as people, mentally, psychologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually. All parts of us is so important to have well-rounded minds, and that's why I love to read. I will be sure to introduce you to books hopefully you've never heard of before, you've never read before, and I'll be sure to actually physically show them to you, so that should you want, you can go find them in your local library, local bookstores. And I also firmly believe in giving credit to where credit is due, so that's another reason why I share the books with you, so you know that this is the actual book I went to for my information. So just keep in mind, just a friendly reminder, please keep communication respectful in my comment section. Feel free to ask any questions. If you'd like to start a lively debate or a lively discussion, feel free to do so. Just please be respectful, because we're all adults here, right? We can share different opinions on things and still get along, hopefully, right? Okay, well, let's get started. So I called us all Inklings. Interesting. And that is because we are covering Mr. C.S. Lewis. I gave several hints about the author that we'd be sharing, and I noticed someone said J.R.R. Tolkien. They were actually best friends, and they actually did collaborate on some works. It's not really known which works they worked together on or bounced ideas off of each other, but they were good friends, and they did like to share ideas. So this is Mr. C.S. Lewis. He is one of my favorite authors because even though he was a Christian author, his books covered a very wide branch of literature. Some of them could be considered and are considered, in fact, science fiction, fantasy, like the Chronicles of Narnia, one of his most famous books. We unfortunately will not be going over the Chronicles of Narnia unless someone comes forward with a particular book. That's because the series is so long and so in-depth and so beautiful and so colorful, I won't be able to do the whole series justice in one video. So if anyone does want me to cover a specific book, just type it in the comments and I'll be sure to get to it. So, on to Mr. C.S. Lewis, known as Jack to his friends. He really only went by C.S. Lewis if he was publishing a paper, writing a professional letter of correspondence, or if he just wanted to sound pompous, because that was a little bit of his personality. He did like to sound a little pompous from time to time. So, his full name was Clive Staples Lewis, and he was born November 29th in 1898 in Belfast, Ireland. He is not a British author, even though there are some people who think he is British. Nope, he is Ireland, so woohoo, go Ireland. You birthed one of the greatest authors of our time. Good job. His parents were named Albert Lewis, who is a solicitor. That is another name for a lawyer in that time period. And his mother, Florence Hamilton, who is also known as Flora, affectionately. Albert adored his wife. He loved her very, very much. And they had two children. They had Clive, which is our friend today that we'll be talking about, and his brother Warren. So Clive and Warren were very, very close with their mother. Their father was busy and he loved to read, but he didn't really share much of that passion with them. That was more the nursemaid and their mother. They had a huge library. Clive was often heard saying, to find a book to read in my father's library was often like finding a blade of grass in a field. So this family is very literary minded. In fact, his mother had a degree which was almost unheard of in this time period. She had a degree in mathematics and literature, and she actually did contribute to some magazines and even some stories. And I will do my best to find her magazines. I have not been able to find them yet, but as soon as I can, I will share them with you. Florence Hamilton was a low-ranking gentry. Her one side of her family was all clergymen, long line of clergymen. In fact, her grandfather, C.S. Lewis's great-grandfather, was a high bishop, even in a church in Ireland, which was very fascinating. Flora was very well read. She loved to read, and she carried on that tradition to her sons. Unfortunately, when C.S. Lewis was about 10 years old, his mother developed cancer, and she did die. Now, this time period did have a big influence on him and his brother because his father did not handle it well. Albert Lewis loved his wife so much that when she got sick, he devoted his every waking moment to try and get her the best doctors and the best care to get her better. Unfortunately, it did not work, and she did pass away. But during this time period, C.S. Lewis and his brother Warren were very much left to their own devices. They had a very large house where they would explore and create imaginary worlds to play with each other, because back then they didn't have TV. That was their main source of entertainment. In fact, the most favorite imaginary world that he and his brother loved to get into and play into and kind of thrive in was called Animal Land, where all the animals could talk by magic. Does that sound familiar? If you guessed The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you are 100% correct. In fact, one of his favorite tutors is often thought to be the inspiration for the professor in that novel. And him and his brother's adventures and how they were kind of left to their own devices was more like the magician's nephew. And so already he is forming in his mind such wonderful fantasies and healthy fantasies that in fact would help him deal with his mother's passing in a way that was healthy and constructive. Another interesting thing about C.S. Lewis is he was not a Christian for his whole life. Not many people know that. He was baptized in Anglican. Sorry, that's a hard word to say for some reason. But he was an atheist for most of his life, and part of that was because some of the questions about faith and about why things happen stemming from his mother passing away, and also stemming from the horrible abusive school that he went to. It's called Wynyard School. Look it up. You will be amazed at what you read about. I looked up this school. It was actually closed because people were not wanting to enroll their children there because of the abuse from the teachers and the headmaster. In fact, when C.S. Lewis and his brother were enrolled, his brother had been enrolled about 3-4 years prior, before C.S. Lewis arrived. And his brother had often wrote letters home to his father saying, please get me out of here. There's beatings, there's verbal abuse. It's basically not a good environment for me. And then their father, who was so overwhelmed with grief, he would write the school back to try and figure out what's going on. And the headmasters would basically lie. So unfortunately, poor Warren and C.S. were sent to a school in England. So they were educated in the British school system because their mother believed that was superior. But unfortunately, in this time period, in the very early 1908 is when he was sent to Wynyard School. In this time period, it was very looked down upon to be Irish. So C.S. and his brother had a lot of hard times. They were often used as poor examples due to their heritage. So that, again, resonates to a lot of his fans, because a lot of people have that same issue. You're judged for your differences, and a lot of the times he used those experiences in his life to help write his books and help bring those questions to the forefront in a way that makes it easier for people to deal with. But we'll continue on. J.R. Tolkien's friendship with C.S. was one of the steps he took to help him become a Christian. J.R. Tolkien, as we know, was a devout Christian. They became friends, and interesting thing about C.S. Lewis is he came to Christianity by using logic and reasoning, the philosophy of apologetics, which is the use of your logic and reasoning to argue a point, argue a belief system. In fact, C.S. Lewis wrote several wonderful apologetic books, essays. He had several broadcasts that he used apologetics to show people to use their reasoning to reach their own conclusions about faith. What I find interesting about C.S. Lewis is that he was known to be very bright as a student. He was highly intelligent. He had a vivid imagination, and he had a way of being analytical and finding the little loopholes and things and bringing them to people's attention. But He had a poor memory. In fact, his favorite tutor often voiced the concern to C.S. Lewis's father that I'm worried he's not going to do well in school because his memory is not the best. So, anyone out there absent-minded, like yours truly, guess what? There's hope. C.S. Lewis was a brilliant man. He didn't let his memory stop him, neither should we, right? Okay. He loved to use the radio and broadcasts. He did not use them like Orson Welles did. Orson Welles used them to help read his books to people. C.S. Lewis used them more for apologetics and things of that nature. Since that was towards the end of his career, he really focused on apologetics, and that was really his passion. He is known to have written more than 30 books, which are famous and circulated completely worldwide in more than 30 languages and have sold millions of copies. That's another reason why I chose him for my first broadcast with you, friends. He is so incredibly well-known and famous for books other than the Chronicles of Narnia. Yeah, the Chronicles of Narnia are incredible books. A total of about 12 books in the series, and each book is its own tapestry, in a way. But I chose something different, and you will see why here in a little bit. I chose the book that I did for our first episode together. So these are the two books I used for researching him. I found them in my local library. Unfortunately, the biographies on C.S. Lewis and the essays and examinational essays written on him, they're kind of hard to find, but this one is The Making of C.S. Lewis from Atheist to Apologist, 1918 to 1945, written by Mr. Harry Lee Poe. This helped me understand a little bit more about what led him to his faith, and it really helped me understand and appreciate a little bit more the actual book that we'll be talking about today. So again, The Making of C.S. Lewis, From Atheist to Apologist, 1918 through 1945. I strongly recommend this book. It is a biography, and I know some people biographies are not their thing, they don't prefer them, but do give it a try. Mr. Poe here does a good job of writing a somewhat dry subject and still making it entertaining and enjoyable to the reader. The other book I used for researching our friend Mr. C.S. Jack Lewis, yes, Jack was his nickname, Becoming C.S. Lewis, a biography of young Jack Lewis, 1898 to 1918. This is the one I used when I was studying more of his childhood. This goes into great detail of his time in Wynyard School and the other schools that he went to, university, which college over there, and things like that. So I'm still reading it. I suggest y'all read it. It's very fascinating. Like, your heart goes out to this poor kid. Like, you just want to pick him up and cuddle him and his brother, with what they went through. So again, local library. I've not found them in a bookstore yet. That doesn't mean you could not order them on Amazon or something like that, but I found them more easily in the library. Okay, so let's see. Let's move on, shall we? Again, if you feel like leaving a comment, please do so. Just keep it polite and mature. Okay, guys? Because the book that we're going to talk about is one of my personal favorites. Now, please understand me. Hear this disclaimer. Are you listening? Turn up the ear dials, okay? Because this book, C.S. Lewis is a Christian author. Yes, he uses apologetics as a foundation for his novels because that's what he was passionate about. I am not here to convert anyone. Hear me again. This is for pure information, entertainment, value. This is not meant to change your life or change your mindset of philosophical beliefs. It's not that. This is just something I enjoy doing. So if I mention something from the book that you disagree with, please bear in mind is I'm literally quoting a book. I'm literally quoting an author that is deceased. I'm quoting literature here, okay? Do not think that these views are my personally felt beliefs. I will let you know when they are. Take what I say with a grain of salt. This is to be enjoyed, not be looked at as a reason to be offended, okay? Again, I am not here to convert anyone. I am not here to change your mind. I have friends of all walks of life. These are just books, people. Books. Thank you. Also, another thing, some of the subjects I will be covering in this channel, and especially in this series, might not be suitable for children. So please use your own judgment and discretion before showing this to children, because it's going to raise questions that they're going to want to ask you about. Just a heads up. So if you have any child younger than about 13 years old, I wouldn't let them watch this channel. There's no sexual content. There's no profanity in this book. It's just some of the topic matter might be uncomfortable for people to talk about. But it's nothing graphic or racy. C.S. Lewis never wrote anything like that. So please use your own judgment in when you decide to let a child under a certain age view my content. I will always give this disclaimer before every discussion, and I will periodically repeat it so no one can say she never said anything. Okay, so this first book that I'm going to introduce to you tonight is one of my personal favorites for several reasons. One being that even though it's a fictional work, it does leave the question, is this real? Like, where did he get his inspiration? Where did he get this idea from this book? Another reason is that it is a great book to make you stop and think and look at own issues in your life that you may have had, and how, if you're going through them in the past, how you could have handled them better. And if you're going through them right now, it does open up a new way of thinking, hey, how can I look at this situation differently? Also, it's written like a combination of a religious fictional work, a psychological thriller, a little bit of horror, and even a little bit of history, even if you want to broaden your view a lot. So the name of this book is The Screwtape Letters. I love this book. This was my first book I read by C.S. Lewis that was not the Chronicles of Narnia. So it's called The Screwtape Letters. And it's a very fascinating book. What I find interesting is, even though this book was very popular when it was first released, C.S. Lewis did not like writing it. He said it was not fun, and he vowed to never write another letter. Which again brings the question, why? Was it because writing this brought up so much disturbing memories because he served in World War I? He saw battle. He lost his mother at a young age. He faced horrible abuse at a relatively young age when he went to that boarding school. So was this work hard for him because it brought up those memories and kind of exorcised them, which was painful? Or was it another reason? See, that's why I love the psychological thrilling aspect of it. It literally makes you wonder, the entire time you read the book, why did he vow to never write it again? And where did he get this concept from? Because, we all have moments where we're like, where is this thought coming from in my head? Where is it coming from? Why am I thinking these thoughts? And I tell you what, every time I read this book, and I've literally read this book so many times, I've had to replace it twice. This is my third copy, y'all. Yeah. Every time I read it, doesn't matter how many times, I keep thinking, is it real? And if it is real, holy cow, how did he get it? How did he get this? So a little bit of background on our book. The Screwtape Letters is technically defined as a fictional work of Christian literature, also just as fiction. It is made up of 31 letters. The chapters are literally described as letters. And again, disclaimer, this is from the book's viewpoint, not mine. I'm literally quoting a book. Okay, disclaimer cleared. I'm good. The letters are between two demons, a tempting demon who is given leave on earth, and a demon of hell who is named a Screwtape. And the conversation between these two is Screwtape's nephew, Wormwood, his job is to tempt this human, which they refer to as the patient. Throughout the whole book, this person's called a patient. which is very interesting because it kind of puts the idea in your head that, again, this is from the book's viewpoint, this is from information from this book. Why would demons call mankind patients? Are we sick? Or is it because they view our struggle against our nature and the struggle against that nature in order to better ourselves? Do they see that as an illness? Do they see that as a handicap? Something that should be treated and and done away with? Why do these two demons refer to the human as patient? Just kind of let that thought ruminate a little bit in your mind. These demons, again, this is the book's view, not mine. These demons call mankind patient. Just think. It's very strange. Kind of made a little chilling because it gives them a whole new level if you think about it. If they view us as patients who are ill, I've never known a more stubborn person, hell-bent, than a doctor trying to cure somebody. So it kind of brings a whole new level to the thought of temptation and what their job is. So, now that I've set the scene, you see why it's a little bit of a horror. Demons vying for the soul of a human being is pretty scary. Again, I'm speaking from the realm of this book. Not trying to convert anybody here. It's just interesting that little bit of horror aspect is in there. And the psychological thrill aspect of it is in there too, because you're wondering, as you read the book, is he going to succumb? I'm not going to tell you. We're going to talk a little bit about the book. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of in depth to it because I want to encourage you to go read it. If you've never heard of the Screw Tape Letters, if you're not really familiar with C.S. Lewis, I really want you all to go out and read and form your own ideas. That's why C.S. Lewis wrote the books that he did. It's why he became so interested in apologetics. He wants to further our reason. He wants us to use our mind. And I'll go into a little bit more about how that plays out in the book. But I'm not going to give you too much of the information of the book because, again, I want you to go out and read it for yourselves. Because I'm passionate. That's where my passion lies, is encouraging reading in other people. So if you are a horror fan, you will enjoy this book. If you are a fan who likes psychological thrillers, cliffhanger books, you will enjoy this book. And if you're a person who's into philosophy, you will also enjoy this book because it does touch on different philosophical schools of thought. And it's very interesting. Now, again, do not take offense at anything from this book. Okay, it's a work of fiction. And these views are not my own. They are the book. This is from the realm of the literature that I'm talking. Okay, guys? And another important thing to take away from the Screw Tape Letters is the message of hope that it brings. Wait, two demons vying for the soul of a human. How can that bring hope? How is that a message of hope? Again, I will get into that as we continue on with the book. But just remember, there is hope. This book's message is there's always hope. There's always a chance. Be it for redemption, bettering yourself, battling your inner demons. May it be mental, physical, emotional health issues. There's always hope. Always. And that is a lot of the underlying themes in his books. There's always hope. Okay. So, the Screw Tape's letters were written in 1941, copyrighted and published 1942. Now, this is a time period where we all know the Second World War is going on. Blitzkrieg. The UK is getting hammered. There's darkness in this world. There's hopelessness. People are having to ration their food, ration everyday needs. Crime is up. They're listening to their leaders speak on the radio on how they're going to win, and yet they're having to send their children out into the countryside with strangers so they're safe. That actually did happen. He references that in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That was a practice that was used because they wanted their children to be safe. So the time period that the Screw Tape Letters is written is very turbulent. people were losing hope. They didn't know that everything was going to turn out okay in the end. A lot of people were losing loved ones, both as soldiers and both as victims of what was going on the island of the UK. So I find it interesting that this time period is a time period C.S. Lewis chose to write a book of letters between two demons vying for the soul of a person. Because if you think about it, that's the perfect time to tempt someone, is when everything is uncertain, when everything is scary, when you don't know what's going to happen. I think it's incredibly brilliant of him to pick this time to write this book, simply for those reasons. Okay. So other things about the Screwtape Letters is, I mentioned before that he did not enjoy writing it. No one really knows why. He never really said why, as I'm looking through. He, once it was done, he says, I am never going to do this again. I think personally, whatever surfaced while writing it, I think that's what scared him from it, and it was very uncomfortable, because if anyone with trauma has tried to face that trauma to overcome it and heal and proceed, it is very scary, it's very painful. So that's my personal thoughts. Please share your personal thoughts in the comments below why he would never want to write this again. Again, please keep them respectful. Okay? No slander, no mean words. Let's keep it respectful, but please start a conversation, start a dialogue, start something in the comments on this. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the preface of the book to give us a little bit more information on why he wrote it, his inspiration behind it, that sort of thing. Now, I'm one of those people, I like to write in my book. Sorry, any librarians out there? I promise I don't write in the books I get from the library. I use Post-its, I promise. But if it's my personal copy and it's something I'm really interested in, and it's really getting the think tank a bubbling and brewing, I love to write in my book. Like, I highlight, this is, the copy I showed y'all is like my pretty reading copy, but this is my study copy. As you can see, I highlight and I read, because this book raises so many questions about myself. And I've read it with other people, and they all agree. It makes them really look inside here and up here and think. Not so much question themselves, but just think and wonder. And that's one of the things C.S. Lewis always was very intense about, is to use your reason, use your logic to always search for answers. Don't stay in the little box where everything's safe and cozy. Bust out of the box. If you want to learn something, learn it. If you want to experience something new, go for it. Use your reason to become a more well-rounded individual and a more intelligent individual. That's what C.S. Lewis was really passionate about with apologetics. So, let's dig into the preface, and then I will end this episode, and I will pick up with the first letter on my next episode, because I really want everyone to get a good appreciation for this literature. Okay? So the preface is the intro. It's the part of the book where C.S. Lewis sets the stage and introduces the characters and introduces himself in a new way that's not... I've not really seen much of this style of a preface in other novelists. If anyone else has, let me know what books that have a preface or foreword or intro that's similar to this. Because this preface is very leading. I'm going to give you a heads up. It's immediately hooked me. When I first picked up this book for the very first time, when I read it, the preface alone hooked me hardcore. And I'm very picky on what I read. If it doesn't have a good hook and a meaty story, I struggle. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I struggle with reading if it is not meaty and juicy with a good hook to it. Okay? So, in the preface, he introduces the story, the letters. And it's interesting that he says, I have no intention of explaining how the correspondence which I now offer to the public fell into my hands. So he is flat out saying, you're going to keep guessing till the world stops turning, and I'm never going to tell you where I got these letters from. He flat out says it. And already that makes me wonder, why are you saying that? I'm already thinking, what? Weird. That's the first sentence of the book. Not going to tell you how I got this information. I mean, any psychological thriller or spy book, something's going on. Okay. He also discusses in the preface. Now, I'm not going to read the preface word for word because, again, I want you to go out there and I want you to get this book yourself. So this first episode, I'm going to keep it pretty quick. So the next episode, we can get into the actual letters. Another great thing about the preface is that he flat out says the two biggest errors you can make is to disbelieve evil and believe it, but chase after it. Interesting. Ignorance is not bliss, basically, is what Mr. Lewis is telling us. Ignorance is your worst Achilles heel. This is a theme he mentions several times in a lot of his books, especially in this one. He does not like ignorance. He wants people to always question and always use their reasoning to find the answer, even if the answer is an uncomfortable one. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is an Achilles heel. This preface also goes to discuss that there's wishful thinking in hell as it is on earth. He also mentions that don't believe even view tapes from the views from Screw Tape himself. Because, again, this is the book's viewpoint, not mine. All demons are liars. Again, do not be offended. This is just the book. Demons are liars, so you can't even trust their own perception, which I find interesting. So he's already telling you, I'm not going to tell you how I got the book or the letters. Evil is real. Don't ignore it, but don't chase after it. And everywhere has wishful thinking. You can't trust the timeline. You can't trust the author, the correspondence. Again, fascinating way to start a preface. Wonderful. Brilliant. He is so brilliant in writing just the intro. The preface alone is so brilliantly written. It's not even 2 full pages. Like a page and a half. Not even that. A page and a quarter. It's not even 2 full pages. And he is already setting such a stage of intense anticipation that it hooks you. And that's why I love this book. I mean, it's just the preface alone, and he's already hinting at things that you're not going to get unless you read, and that's why I'm not reading the whole preface. I'm going to read bits of this book. I'm not going to read it its entirety, because I want to plant that seed in your head where you want to explore more on your own. So she's not reading the whole book. Of course not. What fun is that for you? Go read it, okay? Seriously, get this book and read it. Another interesting thing is he flat out says the timeline doesn't matter to them. Time is irrelevant to them. Kind of makes sense. They're eternal creatures. Timeline would mean nothing to them. But also bear in mind how often he does mention it very frequently. Time is not important to them. Time means nothing to them. Which I find fascinating, because if you think we are finite, we live, we're born, we live, we die. You'd think there would be a sense of urgency to them, but there's not. He says several times in the book, or in the letters, I keep calling it a book, it's a book of letters. He keeps mentioning over and over and over again, time. You have all the time in the world. It's a very laid back. You got all the time in the world. Don't worry about it. And I think that from what I get from the book and how he kind of hints at it, that's the biggest trap. Is you get in that mindset of there's always tomorrow. We all know. Spoiler alert. There's not always tomorrow. Is there? No. So That's why I love this book. It hooks you in. It makes you want to read more. It makes you thirst for more. But I will also give you a heads up on this book. It also is a little uncomfortable in certain ways because, and I'm not one of those people that everything I read I take to heart. It's actually very hard for me to take what I read in a book and have it meaningful to me. It doesn't always sit in my head and make me look at myself in the mirror and wonder about what I'm doing. But this book makes me do that every time I read it. Every time I read this book, it literally makes me stop and think and reflect on myself and my shortcomings. Trust me, I'm not perfect. So I am nowhere near perfect. And this book really hammers that home on several areas, but not in a negative way. That's another great thing I like about C.S. Lewis. Even though his writing can be very in your face, apologetics that should make you feel bad about yourself, they really don't. Because you're so intrigued and you're so interested in getting more into the mystery of the writing that it kind of you forget to be embarrassed about it. You look at it very analytically. Now remember when I said in introducing Mr. Lewis, he was incredibly analytically minded and he was brilliant. Even as a child, it was said he was brilliant. And as you read this book, you will see his brilliance. In my opinion, that is an opinion. I think he is brilliant. I think his manner of writing is incredible. He sets a stage. It's easy to read. I mean, the letters are, let me look real quick. The letters are like 1, 2, 2.5 pages, sometimes 3. They're not super long. The letters, the chapters are basically letters. They're not incredibly long, but he has a way of putting so much information into them that even though you're reading a very short book, it goes on. It seems to go on forever in the best possible way. So, again, that is the preface. We're slowly wrapping up, and I find it interesting that he wrote this while he was working at Magdalen College, and the date at the end of the preface is July 5th, 1941. Now, I will be sure to do some research on the importance of that date because something's telling me, like, it's not just a random date. I'm going to look at what was going on during that time period. If anyone has knowledge of that, please drop it in the comments. Of July 5th, 1941. I find it interesting that he wrote this while he was at Magdalen College. This is the college that he did work at for a while. He was a professor there. And that is one of the places where he had his Inklings club, which was a club of people who like to read books and discuss them. Now do you see why I named my channel Inklings? Because I want all of you to be my little Inklings. I want us to dive into the world of literature like we've already started, get little gold treasures out of it, and share it with each other. So, C.S. Lewis wrote this book in order to help people come to terms with what was going on. He wrote it as a platform apologetics to where people could read it and enjoy it. Because people don't like to talk about their faith in this time period. They were not comfortable like we are today with talking about their faith. So I think C.S. Lewis was brilliant in using this format because it was a little risque, it was a little shocking. But he did it in a way that it got people talking about their beliefs, sharing them with other people, and opening up that community. Creating a community where people could talk about their beliefs, maybe even their fears in a way that was safe. Because in this time period, people weren't allowed to talk about it. It just wasn't. And also think about wars going on. Nobody's going to want to talk about things like this. But again, he chose this time period to write this book, which I think was incredibly genius of him. So, My little Inkling darlings, that concludes my first episode of the Inkling channel. We will talk more about Mr. C.S. Lewis and his fabulous book, The Screwtape Letters. I strongly recommend at some point, please buy it or go to the library. Don't buy it unless you just love collecting books. You should see my collection. It's crazy. If you like to collect books and you like to have them just to have them, go ahead and go buy it. But if you're on the fence that this might not be the genre for you, and that's cool, that's fine, at least check it out of your library and at least look through it. I'm going to update hopefully every Monday. That is my goal. Every Monday I hope to have a new channel, but I will let you know. I will let everyone know via TikTok and Facebook. Please, 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 please look into this book by our next meeting. I really want you to read into it with an open mind. Whenever I bring up a book, look at it with an open mind. Not that little box we talked about. No, take the box, throw away the box. No boxes allowed on this channel. Okay? Open your mind and read this book. I really want y'all to enjoy it like I enjoy it and to open up some discussions in the comments. Okay? So, thank you, my little Inklings. It was so wonderful to talk with you tonight. Next Monday, I will open up with letter 1, and we will see what's going to happen next. Ta-ta!